Hello, hello. We are live on Facebook. First Friday of every month, we are going to be here for a free question and answer session on how to apply the science of yoga for addictions. My name is Claudia Carballal, substance abuse prevention specialist. I teach yoga psychology and meditation. I specialize in Hatha yoga and Raja yoga, which is type of meditation. I help people master themselves by understanding and mastering their thoughts and their mind. I am a former lawyer turned yogi and mental health professional, and I'm currently doing my last year of a master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I'm doing my internship at a clinic. Sheri?
Hi, I'm Sheri, Cherokee. I am a yoga instructor. I also have teacher training programs in yoga, 200-hour, 500-hour trainings. I give Ayurveda certification. I have a Ayurveda certification program. Ayurveda is one of my specialties, and I'm also a Vedic counselor.
Perfect. We are not experts in addiction. We don't do addiction recovery or addiction detox or anything like that. We are more on the prevention side. Substance abuse is the use of any substance to the extent that it causes physical, mental, or emotional pain and damage. So damage is the key word here. It's the use of a drug that causes damage to ourselves and our life. And many people ask, how do I know that the drugs that I'm using is not only recreational, but is causing damage? And we are talking about drugs all inclusive. It doesn't matter if they are legal or illegal. We know that pharmaceuticals, prescription medication is legal, but it can also cause damage. So any drug of abuse is what we are referring to here. So what we do is prevent harmful behaviors, negative coping behaviors, and that includes substance abuse and substance dependence, drug abuse, drug dependence, and addiction. The question is, as laws and social views on drug use or abuse change, does it become more difficult to address drug addiction? If the laws and regulations in our environment, in our community, or in our city, they are changed, like they become more flexible, does that make addiction worse in our community?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility, definitely, because you do have people that abuse prescription drugs. And, you know, people that abuse prescription drugs, it's because they're legal and they think, well, it's legal, so I can take this. So yeah, I think that's a good question about if the laws get more laxed. I think nowadays, so many people are going outside of themselves to find happiness, to feel good, to have those feel good chemicals, and they reach for drugs to do that. And most people don't realize everything you need is inside you. But, you know, and that's easier said than done. It's like, well, you know, okay, it's inside me. Well, how do I find it? To keep you from reaching from something outside yourself that you think is going to make you happy, but in the long run, it's going to destroy your mind, destroy your health. It's going to destroy your life.
I think, yes, there's actually research on when laws and regulations in our communities are more relaxed in terms of the legal age limit to buy drugs, including alcohol and tobacco. Those are drugs. When they are more flexible, people acquire drugs more easily, and it is seen as less harmful. So there is a perception socially in the community when the laws are more relaxed that it is okay to use drugs. So yes, that's a great question. We talk about the key words for identifying drug abuse, the addiction continuum. So we go through 4 phases for people who use drugs or abuse drugs. The first phase is recreational use, fun, social gatherings, the context of parties, celebrations, and that is drug use. It is very easy to cross from drug use to drug abuse. That is the second phase. And in the second phase, there's craving for the substance. So this is a key moment where everybody should be very attentive. When you start craving the substance and you miss it and you want to have it again, that is a sign of abuse, that we are abusing the drug. The third stage is dependency. And this is when we are developing tolerance to the drug. Tolerance means that your body adjusts to the drug and the body needs more to feel the same effects. So this is very dangerous, obviously, for the mind and body. And then the fourth stage, the last stage, is addiction. And addiction causes physical symptoms, not only psychological craving, but also physical symptoms like withdrawal, could be vomiting or cold or depression, things like that. So Sheri and I want to talk about something very interesting and important about drug abuse, and that is emotional comfort. So in the definition of drug abuse is emotional comfort. All drugs provide some level of comfort. And this is like positive feelings. Maybe if we are shy, we feel less shy. Maybe if we want to be more relaxed, we feel less stressed, less nervous. So all drugs provide something. And I want to mention Dr. Gabor Mate. Dr. Gabor Mate is a Hungarian-Canadian doctor, and he's an expert on trauma and addiction. He has this quote: "It is impossible to understand addiction without asking what relief the addict finds or hopes to find in the drug or the addictive behavior. Everything we do has a purpose. If we feel lonely and we don't want to feel lonely, we may resort to drugs to feel better. If we have trauma from childhood, if we feel insecure, we may use drugs to feel better or to feel normal. What relief this person is trying to seek." What do you think about that quote, Sheri?
No, I think that's very good. Because most people don't think about the why they're doing something, especially drugs. Because it can go really deep of why you're doing it. Most people, it's like, well, I feel bad, I want to feel good, and that's it. But getting down to why are you doing it? What's going on inside of you? What feelings are you having? And a lot of times people are numbing those feelings, and then they get so numb, they don't know where to begin.
Yeah. And obviously this question and answer session is about yoga, how to apply the science of yoga to prevent substance abuse. That is what Sheri and I are specializing, so to speak. Yoga is mastering of yourself. Yoga means union. It has deeper significance, but yoga as a science is mastering over your own self, your own mind and thoughts, because we are what our minds create. We are our thoughts. So that is so critical, very crucial. I'm very passionate about this topic because we pay so little attention to our thoughts, to our mind. And just as we go to the doctor when we hurt a leg or we break an arm, we have to take care of our mental health when we see some signs. And this is when it's very tricky because people try to deny, like Sheri, you were saying, you know, sometimes we deny it or we deceive others. And we deny that we are abusing drugs. We try to justify that it's just for fun. I'm not addicted. I know what I'm doing. And the line, the red line where we go from substance use to abuse is very thin. When we say the science of yoga, is because yoga is a system. So the definition of science is a systematic study and exploration of something in the world, a phenomena, an event, a situation, something. The sages of India, many, many years ago, they studied their own self, their own mind, through meditation and hatha yoga. These are the two main areas that Sheri and I teach. Hatha yoga, meditation. This is the traditional yoga that really helps us master our mind. Sheri, what is your experience with hatha yoga and helping people master their own selves and their minds?
Well, you know, most of these yogic teachings, they're Vedanta teachings. And Vedanta, which is part of Hatha Yoga, all of these different yoga systems, Hatha Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga. There's 4 dharmas in life, and one of them is knowing what your purpose is. And you have to explore that. That's within you. What makes you happy? What kind of work makes you happy? And I know for many years, I worked at jobs I did not like. But I always had the love for yoga, and I realized my purpose was to teach yoga and the deeper teachings, not just a posture practice, not to be an exercise instructor, but really go into the deeper teachings of yoga. That makes me happy. It makes me happy to see people connect to that and start understanding themselves. And then we have to set goals according to our purpose in life. And we have to stick to those goals. And then, there's another phase of it where we create wealth to be able to do what we want to do. And the wealth should be distributed. We shouldn't hoard it. Keep it to ourselves. And it doesn't mean you can't have nice things. It's just not hoarding it all. And so these are some of the different phases of our lives that we need to explore. We need to look at and find the purpose and stay on course. Some people, their purpose may be to raise children or be a school teacher, but finding your purpose, knowing that Dharma, what is your Dharma? What is it? Why are you here? You're not just here to go and drink and pop drugs in your mouth. You're here for a purpose. The divine creator put you here. So you don't want to destroy your body. You don't want to destroy your mind, because there's really bad consequences to all of that. And so yoga really puts us on a path so we can look at ourselves, we can understand what makes us happy, and stick to that for the rest of our lives, and cultivate that spirituality, that spirit that we really are. And when you connect to the soul, yoga union, connect to your soul, the soul will guide your life. And that's what we need to do. We need to have that soul guiding our lives.
I love that, Sheri. You explained it so very well. You know, the deeper meaning of yoga, of really finding a purpose in life and not being a slave of drugs. To me, my purpose in life is to find freedom, and not freedom of doing whatever I want in a selfish way, but freedom of health, health, being stable, emotionally stable, happy as much as possible, and joyful and peaceful. How do we help people prevent drug abuse, substance abuse, and substance dependence through yoga? We want to talk about the Yoga Sutras a little bit. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is considered the first psychological manual. Sage Patanjali lived through around 400 before Christ and 200 AD during the time. Around those times is when Patanjali codified teachings of yoga from different sources, like Sheri says, from Vedanta, from different schools of Hinduism that refer to this mastery of yourself, mastery of your mind. This is why we call yoga a science, and largely thanks to the Vedas, to Vedic scholars, and to Sage Patanjali, because they systematically codified the yoga tools, yoga techniques in books. And that's what we inherit today, and that's what we studied when we take yoga teacher trainings like Sheri teaches. And of course, we don't cover all those books because it will take years and years, but we take we actually have the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in class when I took my first course with Sheri. That's what Patanjali did. So in India, Sage Patanjali, sage is a prefix for a very accomplished self-mastery of himself, a yogi, and a very accomplished person, not in the Western sense of material possessions and money, but accomplished of mastering his own mind, thoughts, and emotions. In the Yoga Sutras, we learn how to turn within ourselves. And one of the best techniques to turn within is meditation. Why do we want to turn within in relationship with substance abuse prevention? Because, or any addictive behavior, any negative coping mechanism, we are talking about the same thing, right? We are trying to fulfill an emotional void, and we try to fill it with drugs because they are available, because it's cool, because we don't know any better, whatever the reason, and we try to fill that void. The other option, the other path to feel good is Hatha yoga, meditation, and many other yoga tools. And how do we know this works? Well, it's not, like Sheri says, yoga is not a cure for addiction. Addiction is a very serious, complex mental illness, and it's treatable, but yoga helps specifically prevent that filling the void with drugs. So one of the questions is, why do we feel the void in the first place, right? And that is a incredible topic that I love to talk about. Why do we feel lonely? Why do we feel like we are missing something? I'm gonna share my opinion, and then Sheri maybe can share hers. I think we are born, when we are spiritual beings, right? If you are a true yogi, you really feel that spiritual aspect of yourself, and you can develop it, you can explore it, and you can find it. But we are really spiritual beings, and we take a physical body in our lifetimes. And when we take physicality, we are not in the subtle body anymore, we are in the physical body. It's heavy, right? We are dealing with pain, suffering, catastrophic events, natural events, constant change, uncertainty. So we are very strong and resilient, but at the same time, we are vulnerable, and we are sensitive. We are emotional beings, because those feelings protect us from dying, right? If we hurt our finger, if we burn our finger, we know because it hurts, so we keep ourselves alive. But if we don't understand how our mind works beyond that if we let it out of control, we can cope with negative mechanisms like manipulating others, or blackmailing people, or being aggressive. Anger is one of the symptoms of something is missing at that void. But yoga tells you how to find that union, that to fill that void is the same thing. Sheri, what are your thoughts on that? Sheri's froze again.
But I think some people do not love themselves. And I'm not talking about love in a egotistical way. I'm talking about what kind of a relationship do you have with yourself? For me, you know, and I know it's kind of a cliche, but I really do feel like I am my own best friend. And I had to learn to love myself. One of Wayne Dyer has a quote. I love quotes. And one of his quotes was, loneliness is not being able to stand the person you're alone with. So you have to cultivate that relationship with yourself. Louise Hay, she was another one of my favorites, and she would say, you know, go stand in the mirror every single day, look yourself in the eye and say your name. And be like me, I would go, Sheri, I love you. I love you, Sheri. And you just keep doing that. And eventually that starts creating change in you. Because I think it goes back to what Claudia was talking about in the beginning, is our thoughts. Our thoughts create our reality. So if you're cutting yourself down all day, you're being negative, that's what you're creating out here. And if you're saying bad things about yourself, like, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't do this, and on and on and on, how can you love yourself when you keep putting yourself down? And you've got to stop doing that, because that, if you, people that care and love about themselves are not going to abuse drugs. They're not going to abuse alcohol. They're not going to abuse their body. And that's what it boils down to, is develop a healthy, happy relationship with yourself. Learn to love yourself, and try that mirror technique. That's really a good technique to use. You can also use affirmations. They work for some people, they don't work for others, but you can't just say an affirmation in one day and expect it to create miracles. Change your, because your self-talk is affirmations. So listen to your self-talk and change it. Be more positive about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important. And we want to mention also that there is a critical age to prevent any negative behavior, any negative coping mechanism that we do to cope with those feelings of something is missing or void or whatever we are feeling as human beings in this physical world. And we can cope with many things. We can cope with gambling, overeating, relationship dependency or attachment, negative attachment to people, not being able to be alone, sex, addiction to food, to compulsive shopping. All of those compulsive behaviors have the purpose of feeling a void, feeling a need. So the critical age to prevent any negative coping mechanism is around 11 years old, 12 years old, 13. That is the age where kids start exploring drugs, experimenting, or at least be curious about it, because drugs are sold at that age by kids of that age, by people who hand them to them. If you have children and you're watching, have conversations with them. It's very important to talk about all of this with them. Ask them, what are your views about drugs? What do you think about drugs? What do you think about marijuana? Know what drugs your kids are using or curious about. Not necessarily using, but because it's not all kids use drugs, thankfully, that's a myth. Most kids actually, and high school kids, don't use drugs, but some do, a lot of them do. Turning within to prevent that void that we naturally have as humans in this physical body, to go within, to have healthy coping mechanisms through meditation and yoga, exercise, good nutrition, all of that. So based on that, the most logical thing that I can think of is why is not yoga being taught in schools in America? I have an answer to that. That's not a question on the chat, but it's a question that many people have asked, and I ask myself. All public schools are run by Board of Educations. And some people are very traditional in the school boards. They make decisions about what books your kids are reading, what curriculum the schools implement. And a lot of these board members, school board members, they are elected, they are part of the government. They are very traditional and sometimes over religious. And that's not necessarily bad, but sometimes they confuse yoga with religion. And they think teaching yoga in public schools is adding a different religion to what they think should be or should not be, because public schools should be neutral. But we bring a lot of bias and a lot of prejudice with ourselves to our job, to our work, unfortunately. And yes, so that's what I have found, that school members sometimes block meditation classes, yoga classes. There was an article recently on the news about, I think it was the state of, one of those states in the north, I don't remember right now. They just approved, after years and years of debate, they just approved meditation classes for preschool, kindergarten. Yes, after years of debate, because they didn't want to. Meditation and yoga sound like, oh, it's a religion. It's not. Sheri, what are your thoughts on that? Why is yoga not taught in schools? Do you think it will help if yoga is taught since kindergarten and meditation?
Oh, absolutely, definitely, and that is the big thing, is people think it's a religion. Yoga is not a religion, and people, they'll say, well, it's Hinduism. Well, the British coined the word Hinduism. They didn't call themselves that. It comes from Vedic things, Vedanta, Sanatana Dharma, and it's a way of life. And you choose your own path. It gives you, the Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, gives you values and morals that you practice. And some of these are the same things you find in religions, which is good for us to have morals and values. And it's very good for children, especially to learn at an early age to go within, to connect with themselves. I work with a woman in Mexico, and she does kids yoga, and she does young kids all the way up to teenagers. And it's just amazing how periodically she gets a rowdy kid that's hard to handle. The parents can't handle them very well. The school has a hard time handling them. And over a period of just a few weeks, the kid starts calming down. He starts waking up. And that's the amazing thing about it. And also these school boards and people, they're going by what somebody else has told them. They don't do their own research. Perhaps if they went to a class or they sat in a meditation session for a while, then they would have a better understanding of what it's really about, instead of things they've heard or something they've read in the newspaper, because it's a beautiful, beautiful teaching. It just teaches you how to be a good, healthy, mentally, emotionally, physically person.
Yeah, that's all it is. Mm-hmm. Teaching kids meditation and principles of yoga when they are very little, since pre-K or kindergarten, I think that's going to be revolutionary. If we start doing that, the world is going to change tremendously. It's going very slow because, there are some obstacles like school boards and things like that are very traditional and afraid of introducing something new because they have no idea. But I invite them to learn more about yoga and meditation and see how wonderful it can transform the lives of people. Okay, mindfulness is more like a Western word. Mindfulness can be also explained as self-awareness. So if we tell kids when they're very young, you are going to feel lonely sometimes. You're going to feel a void sometimes. You're going to feel maybe insecure at times. You're going to be afraid. You're going to feel feelings of anger in your life. But there's ways that you can deal with all of that and try doing meditation, mindfulness, yoga. So putting those resources and tools available for kids when they're very young, I think it will be a revolution if every kid will be meditating instead of playing video games and becoming angry and using drugs, or not only using drugs, but becoming aggressors, because the emotions have to go somewhere. So that's why I love this quote from Gabor Mate, that to understand a person who uses drugs, understand what void they are trying to fill. And mindfulness also, aside from giving us skills, it also involves neuroplasticity. And I'm sure everybody has heard about that. That's the new thing. I think it was a wonderful discovery to know that neuroplasticity changes the structure of the brain and the way we think. So that is the ultimate hope, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you genetically or biologically are predisposed to source to negative coping or drugs. You can change the path of your life through mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and maybe counseling and a lot of help, because every person is different. There is a quote that I love that is in the Yoga Sutras in the introduction, and it says, "Truth is one, paths are many." That to me means that there is a universal truth that we are all trying to find. And the paths you have to explore yourself. You have to be your own scientist and explore what works for you. In the other session, I talk about yoga being like a toolbox. That's how I see it. And you have to choose the tools that you need for yourself, for your circumstances. So that can be meditation combined with counseling, or hiking, going to nature, if that's your thing, or developing more relationships, or better nutrition, better diet, combined with yoga, hatha yoga, things like that. Sheri, your thoughts on that?
Meditation creates that gray matter in the brain, and you've got many sections of the brain, but I'm going to just talk about three. You've got the pons that are like right here at the bottom. You've got the center of the brain, it's the emotions. And you also have what's called the amygdala, which is the reptilian brain. That's where jealousy, anger, some of those emotions are activated. Fear, that's another one. And then up at the top of the cortex, this has to do with the higher mind. So meditation over a period of time puts you in the higher mind. And that's the mind of discrimination. And that's knowing right from wrong and always doing what's right. Now, if that doesn't get developed, let's just say I'm somewhere standing around some people and somebody calls me names or something, and I start reacting to it. So the pons have to do with your physical reactions, movement. Maybe somebody calls me a name, and I get so emotionally tied up in that I go and I hit the person because I'm in the emotions, I'm in the reactive mode. But if I'm a meditator, I've developed this higher mind where I'm not going to be so reactive. I have more control of my emotions. I'm going to step back and I'm just going to be the witness. Why am I getting so worked up over this? This is not important. I don't really know this person. There's no point in getting more involved. Then maybe my decision is to walk away.
Yes, super important to understand that brain, that meditation really helps to train the non-reactive mind, the non-reactive emotional part of human beings is what mindfulness is. And yes, very important, Sheri. Thanks for sharing that. For people who have trauma or certain tendencies, is going to be more challenging, but it is possible. It is completely possible. It's like anything else. It's all about practice and having the right guidance, maybe finding the right teachers. If you are interested in starting yoga and meditation, you know, someone who has the experience to guide you. But you can do it on your own, even if it's 10 minutes every day, 5 minutes every day. That is something. Is the beginning, and is gonna slowly work that brain muscle, so to speak. It's not a muscle, but it's like a muscle. Like the more you go to the gym, the more muscle you build. Yes, there is also a great book about, it's called The Mindful Way Through Depression. And in there, it explains how mindfulness helps exactly what Sheri is explaining. There is a window of opportunity, this book explains, where we can catch ourselves before our thoughts create an emotion. So the way human beings act is thoughts, emotion, behavior. That is like, you can see it as a line or as a circle. So that is actually a cognitive behavioral therapy approach, is the circle of thoughts, emotions, behavior. So what psychologists and counselors try to help people with is to see things from a different perspective, and to understand how the thoughts that come to our mind, whatever the reason is, we have fractions of a second or seconds to catch that thought before it creates an emotion that gets out of control and it triggers our behavior. So that is very important to practice when, let's say that we are abusing drugs for a few years and we have cravings. So when you go to a meditator, you train your brain to see that work of the thought, the feeling of craving, and the behavior is to use the drug. But if you stop the thought and route it to another thing, it's hard, but it is the only way to master ourselves. And the more you do it, the better you become at it. Sheri?
No, I agree. It's just like if you learn to play a musical instrument, you have to practice. And that's, again, with meditation, is practicing to get to that point and shifting those thoughts. And another thing too, a lot of people have a very difficult time meditating. It's because the mind, I call it the fiery mind. So one way you could meditate is just go sit outside in nature. Look at the sky, look at the trees, listen to birds, and just quiet yourself and just enjoy the nature, or take a walk. Let it, let the walk be your meditation, where you take in everything. You're looking at the green leaves. This is a beautiful time of year because everything is green. We've had all of this rain. You've got a lot of flowers. And this is, when you look at the beauty in nature, this is like taking in the soma. Soma is like the essence or the nectar of what you're looking in. So you look at a beautiful flower and it's just the beauty of it, the design of it. And we need to take that in and get off the media, get off the television, get off Facebook as much, even though we're on it. But some people, that's
first Friday of the month.
Yeah, not with us, but no, a lot of people, it creates a dopamine. It's like, oh, here's a message from somebody. So we need to limit ourselves and not get this soma, this beautiful essence from mass media. We need to go connect to the earth.
We lost Sheri for a minute, and Sheri is back. Hey, one of the yoga principles is be happy for no reason.
If you can't sit still and meditate, go be outside and take in nature.
Yes.
Take your shoes off, stand on the earth, connect.
Yeah, that's therapy in itself. Something important that I want to mention is that human beings are sometimes afraid of things that is really not a big deal, right? And that fear is social conditioning. That fear is put in our minds since we are very little, right? Like fear of failure, fear of not having enough income, fear of losing our reputation, fear of not having enough food to eat, things like that. And yoga and meditation and all these beautiful principles teach you that nothing is going to happen. We are more resilient than we think. I challenge everyone to try fasting for 3 days, and you'll see everything you will discover about yourself. Fasting is increasingly gaining more popularity in the United States. Fasting is an Ayurvedic method for detoxification. I'm not recommending it for people who have an addiction without the advice of a doctor. It is good to detox, but you have to be in observation because every person is different. But if you have something like a habit that you want to change, if you want to stop a craving of a food or a drink, if you have a craving for alcohol, for marijuana, whatever it is, see what happens if you don't eat in 3 days. That's fasting. We can go without food for weeks and weeks and nothing is going to happen. The body adjusts and you're going to see the increase in energy in the 3rd day. If you can go for 5 days, it's really when it kicks in and starts burning fat and detoxifying the body. But again, just ask your doctor if you can do it because everybody has their own conditions and health. But if you're healthy to do it and you can do it according to your doctor, fasting is wonderful. And that I mentioned that because that also shows us that we really don't need many things to be happy and to be fulfilled. We don't need, nothing is going to happen if we lose our job momentarily. You know, there's always somebody who's going to help, somebody who can hand us a support. There is always something we can do. And that resiliency, we develop it by looking at life from a different perspective. So trying to get rid of fears, baggage, excessive worry, stress, not adding more stress than is necessary. And you'll see, do it as an experiment. That is yoga. So we have Mari saying thanks to both of you for your time and advice. Thank you, Mari Carmen, for joining us. Oh, Sheri's back. Sheri, today is not a very good day for internet.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks, Sheri? We are finishing.
I think we covered a lot. Again, if anybody has any questions, just let us know because we're here for you guys.
We're here for you. And remember that I'm doing free guided meditations every Saturday at 7. I may change the hour from time to time, so just keep an eye on my InnerWellbeing Facebook page. Sheri teaches yoga online, Hatha yoga, the traditional yoga that is correlated with mindfulness and mastering your mind. So feel free to contact Sheri. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.